Good afternoon and welcome to the Halcyon podcast. I'm your host, Lorne Risley. On this very special, wonderful edition of the Halcyon podcast, we're doing Transfer Deadline Day. Yes, it's Transfer Deadline Day, and the reason why I'm making this podcast is simple. Arsenal actually have something to be happy about for once. I know, right? So, long and the short, a couple of transfer sagas have dragged out for most of the window that have preoccupied Arsenal's attention, but then out of nowhere, 3 different stories have culminated to the point where effectively Arsenal fans now have cause for celebration. It's amazing. It's absolutely fantastic. Mkhitaryan and Sanchez have completed their swap deal. That was completed a couple of weeks ago. Mkhitaryan's since made his debut. Today, a few hours ago, Aubameyang has announced that he's signed for Arsenal, which again, considering the kind of calibre of striker he is, at least now, if Giroud does go, you've got competition of Lacazette between him and Aubameyang, which is frankly amazing because then you've got 2, frankly, great strikers to choose from. And now, as of a couple of minutes ago, as the recording of this, Mesut Ozil has signed a new contract. 3.5 years, potentially, but the details haven't been announced officially by Arsenal yet, but it's the same dude who always announces shit that's always accurate. David Ornstein, I believe his name is. But the long and the short of it is that this transfer window finally gives Arsenal pause for thought and cause for celebration because yes, Swansea highlighted the fact that defensively and technically we are still a little bit short. But these signings this season, along with the signings of the next transfer window and potentially Wenger handing it off at the end of his contract to the end of next season, I believe signal the beginning of a new era for Arsenal. And I really believe that. I think at the moment, there's not a lot on the line because there's no Champions League, there's no FA Cup now, the Carabao Cup, we're in the final, which is great, and the Premier League is obviously out of our hands. So, this season we have the chance to focus on winning a trophy, again continuing a pattern of success over the last 5-6 years, which is great, even though I get that competing for the title is where we need to be. That's where it has to lead to inevitably. But picking up the odd trophy here and there isn't the worst thing in the world. And in fact, it gives us pause because again, hopefully it means that we can build and build and build from there. So, what do we need going from here? Well, a lot of people are tweeting at the moment. I've been on Twitter all day. I've been a bit of a keyboard warrior today for some reason. New goalkeeper, new centre-back, new defensive midfielder. As far as goalkeeper is concerned, I kind of agree. And given that there's a plethora of world-class goalkeepers knocking about these days at different teams that aren't settled, I don't think you'd find it hard sourcing another one for a decent amount of money these days. So I'm not too concerned with that. I think the biggest concern is a decent centre-back and a decent central defensive midfielder because I think given City and United spending recently for that area, that looks quite expensive for what it is. You're talking 30, 40, 50, potentially more £1 million with Van Dijk going for 75 for City signing Laporte. I think it was a release clause though, so it was only only a £57 million release clause before that when they were drafted, before everything became hundreds of millions of pounds release clauses. Anyway, drafting a centre back, a quality one, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to try and do this window, but I understand that, you know, Arsenal don't want to just spend. They already spent a decent amount for Lacazette in the summer. Now they've spent a very decent amount on Aubameyang, breaking the transfer record for Arsenal, re-signing Ozil to a very lucrative contract for him, and also bringing in Mkhitaryan. Having almost lost Sanchez on a free in the summer and Ozil as well, they've managed to source a really good replacement in Mkhitaryan. I don't know enough about him, but I know that their link-up play at Dortmund is infamous now, and the fact that there's the Yo Pierre movement that's going around is fucking hilarious. It's brilliant. But it's a great day for Arsenal fans. It's a day we can all be excited about. But this is what a couple of signings can do to the fan base. It really rejuvenates their belief. It rejuvenates their wish fulfillment, because Aubameyang is the kind of striker that always said, oh yeah, I'd rather go to Real Madrid or Barcelona, whatever. Now yes, his quality is probably just slightly below what they would want in terms of a world beater, but he's still a quality striker. He's a great striker, and Lacazette's the same. They're both similar styles of play, which again kind of limits our options, which is why I, for one, I'm in the camp of everybody else. Fuck Chelsea. Don't sell Giroud to Chelsea. Screw that shit. And yes, if that then impacts on Dortmund, it's regrettable. But ultimately, Arsenal don't have to be beholden to other teams. If they don't want to make the deal, if they've signed off on the deal, then that's their choice. They didn't have to sign off on the deal. They didn't have to sell. If we hadn't brought in Aubameyang, I think I'd have been disappointed, sure, but we'd have moved on from it to the next window. I just think now is a critical time. Keep Giroud. Keep him. Find a way of balancing the team as it stands at the moment. And yes, probably Lacazette is going to have to take the hit, because in terms of form, he's just not doing it at the moment. Giroud is probably causing more of a stir in terms of getting the first team nod at the moment. But obviously, Wenger believes him as an impact sub these days. He's not a starter. But yeah, just think about it, Arsenal fans. Just think about it for a second. Arsenal, in this window, have managed to retain the services of Mesut Ozil when it was looking all but certain he was going. They've managed to swap Sanchez, a once-away who apparently everyone now hates, even though, I've got to be honest, I loved Sanchez as a player. I thought he was a quality player, and yes, he had his pitfalls, but he was a driving force behind our team for a long time, and he's contributed a tremendous amount to Arsenal. So in a way, I don't begrudge him the move. It just disappoints me that it isn't for footballing reasons at the end of the day. He's gone for a lot of money. You know, whatever, fair enough. If I was in the same position, I'd probably do something similar. But as an Arsenal fan, I'd like to think I'd have the fortitude to go to the club and say, look, this is what they're offering me, but this is what I want. This is what I need. I don't want the millions and millions. I'm happy here at Arsenal. But to retain Ozil, to swap Sanchez for Mkhitaryan, who's a quality player, but we just need to figure out where he incorporates into our team, how we can rotate him in and out. If he's playing in a similar role to Ozil, for instance, how do you balance that? But if you could find a way of incorporating Lacazette, Aubameyang, Ozil, and Mkhitaryan, and then having someone or a couple of players in the midfield who can hold down the defence, and then drafting a quality centre-back to marshal that defence, with a goalkeeper that can instill the same kind of ease as Cech does, I think that's a great transfer window and a great basis to progress and move forward with things. And now that you've got spaces that were left by Coquelin, by Gibbs, by Walcott, by probably a few others who I'm forgetting to name right now, there's a chance for young talent to come through, which is great, but there's also the opportunity for players to have an opportunity to see what Arsenal are trying to pilot here. There's an opportunity for players to see Arsenal are trying to play an attacking type of football to progress. Now, with Wenger having only 1 year left on his contract after this one, it's difficult to say where it's going after that without knowing if he's stepping down or not. If he signs yet another extension, I guess I do kind of understand the apprehension that all Arsenal fans have, which is it'll be much of a muchness the year after that and the year after that for as long as his contract runs. I just feel like this window's it's the reason why it's inspired me to make this video. It's a cause for celebration. Arsenal have actually pulled it out of the bag for once. They've got 2 signings over the line against 2 teams who didn't have to do the deal. They didn't both right. Aubameyang didn't have to go anywhere. I get that he's refusing to play and that might have an impact, but it's better to have him on your team than not and not have a replacement. And as far as Man United are concerned, they didn't have to put in the offer. You know, if Arsenal were just, looking at losing Sanchez to City either now or in the summer, hey, they could have competed for him in the summer then. But they chose to go in for him now, which is when we tried to turn it to our advantage, and we did. It's a testament to the fact that Arsenal aren't done yet. Now, all I would say to kind of sum up this, because it won't be a long video, I don't want to just gush for the longest time. The Swansea loss is a sobering moment, because Swansea are not a quality team at the moment. They play some okay football, but they're far from the free-flowing football team that they once were. You know, having gone through a million managers since Martinez left. I think, oh gosh, I forget the name now. I think it's Laudrup. It might not be, I can't remember. But anyway, point being, you know, they won the League Cup. That should have been a platform for success, but within 6 months, I think they'd sacked him, which is just, you know, it's pitiful football these days. It's just sad to see that sort of thing happen. But Arsenal as a football club should take today as a opportunity to relish these moments where we actually have something to celebrate, and hopefully use this as a platform to get back to where we should be, which is competing for the title. Competing for the title, not just competing and doing well and finishing respectively, qualifying for the Champions League or winning the occasional cup. We need to be challenging. As infallible as Manchester City look at the moment, this is not Spain, this is not Germany, this is not Italy. There is no one or two teams that run the that are almost invincible to the rest of the teams. It's just not the way it works. And it can't be allowed to be. You can't start perceiving Manchester City to have this ungodly advantage over everybody else, because they are 11 players, just like any other team. And it's just about figuring out how to stop them, dismantle them, play against them. Arsenal have demonstrated the ability to beat Manchester City in previous seasons when they were strong. Not quite as strong as they are now, I will grant you that. However, it is possible. United are looking stronger. Chelsea, they'll have their bad season, but they'll rebound next season, potentially after they get rid of Conte and bring in Luis Enrique, which is what they're talking about right now. But again, it's a rumour, so you've always got to take that with a pinch of salt. Spurs are in a tricky spot right now. People don't want to admit this because they've invested a lot of their time in shifting the hype from Arsenal to Spurs as the next great London hope. But if you look at it, they lose Kane. If someone comes in for him, they lose Dele Alli, they lose Alderweireld, they lose Lloris. That's 4 players. They lose only one of those players. I don't think they're the same team. Not in the slightest. We've lost Sanchez, who's one of our critical players. We will bounce back from that. It's already happened. We could have lost Mesut Ozil now that Mkhitaryan's in the house, but we've kept him. We've convinced him to stay. So, I think there's cause for optimism now, and I would urge Arsenal fans, if you're listening to this, whoever you may be, to start thinking about things slightly more positively. And just, I'd urge you, come on now, let's get behind the team, let's see what we can achieve this season, let's see if we can walk away with a cup and a decent league position, and then go into next season, the transfer window next season, with a degree of optimism there, and demand this time that the club takes it seriously and says, no, now is when it's now the time to press on with a new forward line, potentially a new back line if they invest their money correctly, potentially looking into replacements for people like I said, Coquelin, Walcott. You've got potentially Chambers and dearie me, the name escapes me, but the other English lad. You've also got people like Cazorla, who's perpetually on the bench now and turning 33 not too soon. Not too shortly. And, you know, there's a couple of players there that could do with replacing. Now, whether or not you're going to get world-class replacements is doubtful, but you need to look at the squad and look at where you can maybe enhance it. I would argue as well, El Nene is probably not up to the task. I'd say Xhaka probably you need to reevaluate the kind of position he wants to play, because I don't think holding central midfield is really his bag. I think he wants to be more attacking, which is where you have to have the debate between him and Jack Wilshere. Wilshere signing a new contract would be great, but again, you'd have to figure out his fitness policy. How are you going to integrate him into the team when he's constantly in and out of it with injury? And I think Monreal's getting on a bit, so you need to look at a replacement for him. You need to look at Bellerin and get him signed to a new deal with a massive release clause, because he's getting tapped on the shoulder by Barcelona, and he will do at some stage. It's impossible. So here's what I'd say. I think that this is a moment Arsenal fans should savour, and I would invite every Arsenal fan to look at this moment having signed these two players and potentially will retain Giroud. It's not a guarantee, but I'd like to see that as a big FU to Chelsea for the bar thing back in the day. But we shall see. Anyways, I'm bringing this overly enthusiastic podcast to an end. It's done. It's over. The transfer window continues, at least for another couple of hours at the time of this recording. So who knows what's going to happen between now and the end of the window at 11 o'clock. So keep your eyes peeled. Let's see what comes of things. I've been your host, Lorne Risley. This has been the Halcyon Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.